I just finished a run. And while I was on the run, I realized I have to record this. As I was running, I ran by the funeral home that I grew up in, that my dad's worked in for over 45 years. The sun was going down. Anybody who's ever been on a decently long run understands a little bit of the runner's high in terms of being lost in your thoughts a little bit, yet having so much clarity and freedom in your mind that it's kind of like you're floating. And these thoughts come in, and it's probably okay to usually let them float by like clouds and we'll never see from them again. But every now and again you have one, you're like, oh, I wish I could remember that somehow. Like that I could use my headphones and like create this video or this podcast episode quickly and just remember the ideas that I have. But it doesn't work like that. So sometimes you get there and you're like, okay, I got to record this right now. And that ties into running. But first, as I was running, I couldn't help but think of how we overthink so much about content creation. And this painting, to tie it back to the funeral home and thinking of grief and death, this painting has my brother's ashes in it. My dad did that as part of his own healing and therapy. I have it now as a gift and a way to remember them kind of looking over me as I create. And what I was thinking about when it comes to grief and existentialism on this run is that it's really not that deep, which is a weird thing to think about when we talk about grief and death. But what I mean by that is that we overthink so many things. What type of thumbnail am I going to use? What font will I have on my website? What if I try to sell something to someone and they say no? What if I create a podcast episode or launch a book and nobody listens or nobody buys it? And the reality of all of that is that we're going to die someday. This carpe diem sort of like mindset that we need to just seize the day, do our best, but at the end of it all, we all become ashes. And the other part of this sort of like euphoric feeling that I was feeling of needing to create was maybe because I was listening to Zach Bryan, Billy Stay, and this concept that soon enough, we'll all be struggling with things. I think the line is in there is that if love were enough, you would stay forever, but maybe sometimes the end is better. Something to that effect. I don't know that the end is ever better. Thinking of my brothers, all the people in the funeral home, but there is a truth to the fact that the end will come for all of us. Now, what the heck does this have to do with helping you in your creator business? Well, I got 2 emails today that also popped in my mind when I was running, each with the number 20,000 in them. From vidIQ, I got an email saying that 20,000 videos have been watched. So I've created 20,000 videos on YouTube alone that have been watched. Not 20,000 videos total, but the total amount of videos watched. And then from Simplecast that I've had 20,000 unique listeners of my podcast. Now, in both of those cases, they might sound like huge numbers. And don't get me wrong. Could you imagine me going and meeting 20,000 people to be like, thank you for watching something I made? It'd be incredible. I mean, 20 people would be incredible. But in terms of monetization, when you have a broad channel, a less niche thing like what I do, 20,000 can actually be a pretty small number when it comes to monetization, which is why I'm creating a whole bunch of episodes right now tied to exactly that, monetizing a creator business the right way, step by step, taking you through the process so that you can see the behind the scenes, what dominoes to knock over in what order, so that you can make money right from the beginning of your show, which is something that I definitely wish I did. Now, 20,000 though comes to mind when I think of the word momentum, because I hit this 20,000 mark on both of those things. My runs right now are going as well as they've ever been. My workouts are, relationships, my work, writing my book. All of these things are kind of clipping along, starting to build momentum, like pushing a ball up a hill. It's going to just end up rolling down. Believe it or not, my second online business was a membership called Momentum. I was trying things out to see how I could help other people establish this type of momentum for themselves, because I know that one word, momentum, is super key to success in basically life. How do you establish momentum when it comes to creating content? Business aside, but you want to write a book, you want to publish a podcast, you want to create a YouTube channel. The first thing that I would do is focus on what I learned from Gary Vee: document, don't create. Now, what I mean by that is don't stress about lighting or sound quality, the production in post too much, because that'll hold you up. I used to think that I had to create like Casey Neistat, where I had all the perfect things on my shot list that I wanted. And now sometimes I'm okay just doing this talking head stuff like this. And if it comes around where I have the resources, the bandwidth, the time and energy to be able to create more slow cinematic edits, that does excite me. I'll get back to it. But for now, I still want to be able to teach. So I need to just do this however I can. So documenting the process, just sharing what comes to mind, is the easiest way to do that. So step 1, document, don't create. Step 2 is do it for the data. Now, what I mean by that is this idea of being a science when it comes to your creativity. And when I think of this, I think of Jay Klaus's The Lab, his membership, where, from what I understand, I'm not inside of it, but they really focus on how can we understand and appreciate the science of being a content creator, the creator economy, and building successful businesses. What comes to mind for me is something that I just talked about the other day, actually, when someone asked me, are you not really into the sciences anymore? Because I have a minor in psychology. I did my university degree in a science-based field. And my first gut instinct was to say, no, I don't really do science anymore. But then I kind of paused, pumped the brakes, because I was like, building businesses, understanding and growing as a content creator is extremely science-based. Now, before the creatives get too mad, I want to explain that I kind of take the approach of doing like 3 or 4 science-based things for the audience, and then 1 super creative one for me. Maybe nobody listens, but I needed to get that off my heart. Similar to this painting over here, like, I don't necessarily expect to make $1,000 from that painting, but I wanted to paint it. And then I'll do 3 things where maybe I look at what would make a really good title, what would make a good thumbnail, what would be a good list of bullet points to teach that would be most likely to be listened to. So do it for the data. Become a scientist. Come up with a problem you want to solve. Like, hey, I want to create a business playlist to help people learn business and build in public while I'm creating my own. I think if I do that for a year or 6 months, that it will be a good measure of if creating in this style is good for me, but it'll also let me know if I'm good at teaching people. That's maybe your hypothesis, that by doing this, you'll grow your own content and you'll be able to serve people, which is fulfilling to you, which will probably give you energy. And then you go and you carry out this test. So you think like a scientist. I will write for 5 minutes. So what's the minimum viable habit? I will write for 5 minutes each day, or I will write for 5 hours each week for the course of 3 months. And every 2 weeks, I'll evaluate A, how it makes me feel, and B, the progress that I think I'm making, maybe C, how I would change things. So be willing to do this for the data. The third thing that connects to is the fact that we don't really get to control outcomes. I love using golf as an example for this. You have to pre-accept that maybe your shot won't work out because Mother Nature plays a big role in all of this. So does pure statistics and probability. And with that mindset, you can commit fully to a shot and it'll give it the best chance of working out in the best way possible. Someone who's talked about this a lot recently is Seth Godin, absolute incredible person in the creator economy. And he talks about it in the form of strategy around the fact that we can make decisions, but decisions have no impact on outcomes necessarily. And so when you think of a good decision you made recently, go ahead, think of a good decision that you made, picture it in your mind. What is the decision that you made that was really good? Why was it really good? Did it have a good outcome? The majority of times, almost all the time, if I put someone on the spot and I ask them, what's a good decision you made recently? They'll tell me. I'll say, okay, why was that a good decision? Did it have a good outcome? And pretty darn near 100% of the time, they will say, yes, it had a really good outcome. That's why it was a good decision. But here's the most important thing. Outcomes are not necessarily attached to decisions. You can make a great decision that has a bad outcome. You can make a terrible decision like investing in some super high risk stock or crypto and have a good outcome like it goes to $1 million. But the outcomes and decisions are actually quite separate from each other. Now, the fourth thing is that you want to try and do this in a stress-free way as possible. And I've been thinking about this a lot recently, again, tied to this idea of momentum. I'm on a run right now. I have like 10 minutes after my run before I go pick up my kids. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to shoot this video quickly because I feel like I have the energy to do so. If you rewind just a few months and certainly a couple years ago, even if I had 10 hours, I wouldn't have felt like I had the energy to do it. And that's because I was kind of burned out. That's a huge topic. It's a massive statement. And I don't want to go too into the nuances of being burned out. But what I mean by that is that when you are overthinking stuff, when you're worrying about things like outcomes, then you may not feel like you have enough time to do something. You hear this all the time in the world of working out. Back when I was a personal trainer, that was the main objection, right? Oh, I don't have time. It's like, well, we do have time. It's what are we choosing to use our time on? And one of the reasons I wasn't choosing to use my time to create content like this or to write my book or build my business was, for one, the fears of things not working out. So all of the dream blockers creeping in, right? What will people think? How will I be judged? Is this good or is this not good enough? Like, if you start being judgmental of the things you've made before or during your making them, then you're screwed. You will be completely in your own way. But once you get out of your own way and you realize that you can be efficient by actually working quicker, it actually gets a whole heck of a lot easier. And I think it gets easier when we come back around to this idea of it just being one big test. Test, test, test. Try something out. Someone says, oh, you should be on TikTok. It's like, great. Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. One of my greatest mentors, John Meese, is hardly, even not at all on social media. Neither is Seth Godin that I mentioned. Not on social media and building massive, massive creator brands. How's that possible? Well, for them, it doesn't really jive. For me, I do like being on socials, but similar to how their mindset is, I'm willing to create fairly quickly because I'm not too stressed about if something does or doesn't work out. I don't take too long to do it. And so in that way, it actually gives me energy to be able to talk to a camera or speak into a microphone. Whereas a lot of other people I know from hearing from them, it's extremely draining. So you've got to find out what is your approach. And the only way to do this is from testing, because there is no right way. There's no wrong way. All of this can work, but there is your way. And the only way you figure that out is by stepping out and trying things, getting some feedback in terms of your energy, in terms of the productivity, and just deciding if you want to do it or you want to drop it. And if you want to do it, keep going. If you don't, stop. So in other words, you're following signals. I posted a video yesterday at the end of my run on YouTube, and it was immediately the most watched video in, very long time. Thousands of people all of a sudden are watching it. I'm getting comments. I'm getting emails about it. I saw somebody in person and they brought up the video. And it was one of the most underproduced things I've done. It took me however long the video was, I think 1 minute and 23 seconds. And it was literally another thought that I had on a run that as soon as I was done, I was tempted to stop my run early, but I didn't. I pushed through. And as soon as I was done, I just turned the camera around and hit record. The way that video did may be part of the reason why I'm creating an episode like this, because I'm just following another signal. Some ideas I had that I know can serve, and I'm going to post them. Now, speaking of burnout and trying to make things stress-free, that was probably the wrong word to use. Again, another thing that you can really compare to running. Maybe the hook point of this episode needs to be something to do with everything you can learn about business you can learn from running, which is kind of funny because I hate running, but I do it because I find it valuable. And I'm maybe starting to like it a little bit. But the idea of stress. So with stress, you want to have an optimal amount. You don't want to be stress-free because that's where boredom, stagnation, and being way too still creeps in, and you just feel kind of useless. It would kind of be like going on a super, 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 super slow walk versus doing a jog that puts your heart rate at like 125 beats per minute. It's a massive difference. On the far end, if you go on a sprint, of 190 beats per minute, your heart's going to explode. It just doesn't work. You can't sustain that. And so finding your optimal point of stress, and that's the big thing that helps us as creators. If you find that Goldilocks point of stress, so you're not creating too little. Like for me, if I look at a calendar, I'm like, holy, like I haven't done any writing in a month and I haven't posted a podcast episode. Like regardless of all the stressors in my life, death and illness and work and bills and different commitments and chores and the things that come up, my minimum viable habit has to be more than that. But then sometimes you get on overload and you're like, okay, I'm doing an episode of this a day. I'm doing an episode of this a day. I'm collaborating with this person, working on a partnership with this person, writing this book, writing that book. And it's just way too much. You can't even sleep. So you got to dial it back a little bit. Find your perfect amount of stress, and that'll help you build all this momentum that I'm talking about when it comes to the creator business.